you so much for joining me on my program once again. I appreciate you wherever you're joining me from. I say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Accept my greeting according to your time zone. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please kindly subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time I upload a video. You can be among the first to receive it. Then go to the comment section at all time. Leave your comment, drop your contribution. If you have suggestions, make it out there. If you have any criticism, put it down on the comment section. It will make us to get better, presenting you a better program.
In the past few days, social media has been abuzz with the hashtags, of course, as a result of your leak and the documents that you have purportedly leaked. Now, I think I'll start from the back and then we get to the front. Your account has currently been suspended as a result of this. Tell us, first of all, why you are handling this, how you are handling all of this, and why the investigation into the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, or in this case, the president-elect.
Okay, so let me start from the issue with my account being suspended. It hasn't actually been suspended; it's just been temporarily locked, which is what happens when a certain number of accounts reports a post of yours, and then Twitter automatically responds by locking your account and then gives you the choice to either delete the content and immediately regain your account, which I can still do if I want, or to go through the appeal process if one believes one hasn't done anything wrong. In this case, I clearly haven't done anything wrong because according to Twitter's own platform policies, the policy on privacy of information doesn't apply when the subject is a public figure and when the post is done in the public interest, which is what this is. Now, what has happened here is I actually got hold of this document quite a number of months ago. I wasn't able to put it out at the time because there was a fear that it might be traceable back to the source. I was told by the source that I should give a certain period of time before putting this out there, which is why I waited until a few days ago to put this out. And what this document proves beyond any conclusive shred of doubt, of reasonable doubts, is that the president-elect has in fact committed the crime of perjury, which is lying under oath. Now, on his INEC EC9 declaration, which is essentially sworn affidavit stating one's intention to run for president, there are several questions that are asked on the affidavit. One of them is, have you ever obtained citizenship of another country? And on the INEC EC9 form, he ticked no. Now, this document proves that he has in fact obtained citizenship of at least one other country that we know of, which happens to be Guinea. Now, one can have several theories as to why, in the first place, what he was doing with the Guinean diplomatic passports in the first place, but that's not the issue. The issue is simply that he did not declare this on his EC9 declaration. He told a lie on his sworn declaration, which is the crime, which constitutes the crime of perjury. On the same EC9 form, there are at least on at least three other instances on the form. There are other things which can arguably be constituted as perjury, but this is by far the most obvious one, which is why I think it has elicited the kind of reaction that it has. But if there's something close to well, I won't call it a regret, but the ongoing presidential election petitions, which have been lodged by the two main opposition candidates, Abubakar Atiku and Peter Obi, for whatever reason, haven't made direct mention of this issue. One would hope that maybe they might be able to add this issue in, but because the point is, if one is going to become president of Nigeria, then the process by which one becomes president of the country must be valid. Now, if the INEC EC9 declaration, with which one declared one's intention to run for president, has fraudulent information on it, has false information on it on sworn statement, then what that simply means is that the person who has filled in that false information under oath is not just unqualified to run for president. Under Nigerian law, perjury is a very serious offense that attracts 14 years in prison. So these are issues that the Nigerian court system must answer.
David, what do you expect, would be the response? I know you would definitely not speak for them, but I've seen interviews where, for example, the former governor of Lagos State, was asked, similar question concerning the Guinean citizenship, and he seemingly answered a different question. And there's also been some type of distraction between what exactly your points are, which are perjury. Some people have tried to make it he could be disqualified from running from being president-elect, or some of all of that because he has double citizenship or dual citizenship, which of course Constitution clearly states that you cannot have if you're going to be president, some of all of that. So what do you expect will be the response or the outcome of some of all of this? And I'm saying that also because we've seen in the build up to the elections, before people even went out to vote, that you had put out, other reports, investigative work that didn't seem to deter a lot of Nigerians from whatever decision they were going to make, towards the election. So how do you think this will turn out? The reaction, first of all, from the APC and from, the president-elect's camp, and generally what this would end as?
So first of all, I don't expect that there will be a reaction or a direct reaction from the APC. Judging from what the reaction was, in fact, which was to report my Twitter accounts, it seems to me that what the APC is going to do is just stick their fingers in their ears and hope that people stop talking about it and hope that it goes away. Bear in mind that this isn't the first time that I specifically have raised the issue of perjury. I published a story about it in November, which wasn't focused on this particular instance of perjury, but as I said, there were several other instances of perjury on the INEC EC9 declaration. I put forward evidence in that article, for example, that the Chicago State University certificate, which is submitted with its INEC EC9 declaration, was in fact a forgery. And on the INEC EC9 declaration, one of the questions asked is, have you submitted a forged certificate to INEC? It takes no. I presented very compelling evidence that what he submitted to INEC was blatantly a forgery. So after I put the story out in November, there was a very, very, very loud and pointed silence from the camp of the APC because there was simply no defense. And I don't expect this time to be any different. I don't expect them to come out and actually attempt to address this directly because, again, there is simply no defense. It is very cut and dried what has happened here. What I suspect will happen is more people will continue doing what the outgoing Minister of Works did in his most recent TV appearance, where he sort of obfuscated the issue and started sort of raising a related issue, which is more or less a red herring, which is the issue of whether under the Constitution someone with dual nationality is allowed to run for president. The reason I call that a red herring is that there is actually it's a legal gray area. So there is, I believe, Section 38 of the Constitution, which states that someone who is running for president is not allowed to have dual citizenship, except they had that citizenship from birth. That if you obtained citizenship, then you're not allowed to run for president of Nigeria. However, there is case law precedent which states something different, which states that as long as you have Nigerian citizenship, the fact of having dual citizenship does not supersede your rights as someone with Nigerian citizenship to run for president. So, which is why I said it's a bit of a red herring, right? Because you can argue back and forth all day, but the real issue for me is the fact that there has been a very, very clear and obvious instance of perjury, something which is clear and obvious even to a legal lay person, that this person has lied in the oath.
I mean, you've highlighted that really there's going to be some back and forth as regards Section 28 sub 1 and Section 137 sub 1, and what the court interprets these to mean, as well as the cases that have been established before. Let's talk about you, David. There are some who think that this might have been a case of a personal vendetta that you might have against not just the president-elect, but against the political party of the All Progressives Congress. What are your reactions to that?
Well, my reaction is the same as it always is, which is that have I presented evidence or not to back up my claims? Have I said something that is true or not? Have I told the truth or have I told a lie? So far in my 4+ years of independent frontline investigative journalism, there is yet to be a single instance where someone has successfully proven that something I put forward in a story or a story that I have broken is false in any way, or has successfully taken me to courts or anything like that. That is yet to happen in just over 4 years of practice. So I think that tells a story on its own. So if anyone believes that this is the product of a personal vendetta or whatever, again, I think of that as a red herring. I think of that as a distraction, because the real issue is it true or is it not true? I presented evidence. I have presented evidence in this case. So the question is, that Guinean diplomatic passport, is that document authentic or not? That's the question the APC should be answering, not whether the motivations of the person who put that into the public domain are what they would like it to be or not.
Yeah, let's now, also talk about, who you expect to take this information that you put out and run with it. If the APC, of course, like you said, you expect that there would be silence from the All Progressive Congress camp and, of course, from the president-elect's camp. Who would you expect to run with it? There is, and that's the why I asked the initial question, like when you see things like this, you would expect that this would be the biggest story across the country. There would be conversations about this, because Nigeria has gone through its electoral process. There's, of course, tribunals, of course, that are going to be coming up in just a short while. So who would you expect to run with this information, and do you think that they will, from what you understand and what you know about Nigeria?
So from what I understand, the two major presidential post-election petitions going on, that's that of Peter Obi and that of Atiku Abubakar, both have a chance to differing extents of actually being able to possibly introduce this as evidence or as issues in their ongoing petitions. From what I've made to understand, from advice from a frontline legal practitioner, the presidential petition of Atiku Abubakar was worded in a more open-ended way, which might lead to that particular petition being more able to potentially introduce this as an issue in court. The Peter Obi petition, not so much, but there's also a limited possibility of somehow maybe being able to introduce it in another guise, since perjury was also mentioned in that petition. But ultimately, it will be down to the court, actually, or the tribunal, actually, to decide whether or not to actually admit this as an issue or to admit this as evidence. But be that as it may, I believe even without this, there was already very strong and compelling evidence of the APC's presidential candidate having blatantly perjured himself on the EC9 declaration, and I believe both opposition parties have been aware of this since last year. So I don't know what their strategies are, or whether they actually intend to introduce this. Certainly, neither of them has actually reached out to me to get hold of this information or to try and get more background on it. But basically, I'm kind of like you in this situation. I'm a spectator like anyone else. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen.
I just want to clarify, did you say that they have reached out to you, or none of them have reached out to you yet?
No, they haven't. Neither of them has reached out.
All right. I think on a final note for me would be, you tread in really, really complicated waters, David. What is it that gives you the courage to keep treading in this uncomfortable waters and staring uncomfortable conversations without fear for yourself?
Well, it's because I believe that in a country of 200 million people, thereabouts, it's not possible that the entire media landscape of our country, of such a very large country, should be subsumed to the interests of such a tiny group of people. I don't believe that it's possible that in a country this big, and with the sheer number of journalists and the diversity of media platforms that there are, it should be so difficult to introduce this as an issue, as a valid issue. So the sort of media blackouts which has been enforced on this and other related issues specifically relating to that specific political candidate, I have an issue with that, right? Because if this person hasn't actually come into office yet and is already able to impose such, blatant media blackouts on discussing real issues, then what that tells me is that if this person is actually sworn in, this person is actually allowed to take office, then journalism is an endangered species in Nigeria. So there has to be at least one person from within the ecosystem that is willing to act in an unconventional manner, or to act in ways that maybe journalists are not typically expected to act in this part of the world, and to say, look, this is what the situation is, this is the evidence, and this can't go away, this shouldn't go away, regardless of what the impact is on, the potential for personal endangerment or whatever. The truth is that 200 million lives are at stake here. So this has to be addressed. This cannot just go away. Our lives have value.
I also, want to quickly mention, we live in a country where we saw former Chief Justice Walter Onoge, kicked out for something that normally Nigerians would, the way Nigerians are, you normally would say, well, that's not even a big issue, but he was kicked out of office, for stuff like that. So you would expect that same country would see perjury as something, if found guilty, if these things are investigated by the right, offices, and, the president-elect found guilty, then you would say, okay, maybe perjury will be a big enough issue for us to have another look at the president-elect, and, if he will be sworn in and some of all of that. But Nigeria is an interesting place. But I also wanted you to ask if any of these, if your previous investigative reports, the money that, of course, was seized by the United States government allegedly from the president-elect, the connections, if any of these things have similar connections, the allegations of drugs and drug funding, as alleged, if any of these things have the same, if they're connected in any way.
Yeah, they definitely are connected. It's all the same story, and it's a story of someone whose entire past, whose entire history is mired in this wall of controversy, this wall of silence. So you have someone who has questions surrounding source of income. You have someone who has questions surrounding potential identity theft. You have someone who has questions surrounding false work history claims, false academic history claims, false declarations on sworn statements, who for whatever reason chose to obtain citizenship, and not just citizenship and hold a passport, a diplomatic passport of Guinea, which is possibly which is now possibly West Africa's closest thing to a narco state. Just a few days ago, it was reported that 1.5 tons of cocaine was seized in a ship that was docked at a port in Guinea, destined for Europe, because that's the route now. So the global cocaine trafficking routes going from South America to Europe goes from Brazil to West Africa, using countries like Guinea especially, and then on to Europe. So of all the countries, someone who has been linked credibly to drug trafficking before, of all the countries to obtain citizenship of and to hold a diplomatic passport of, why was it that one specifically? These are questions that must be answered. And so far there has been no answer.
And we see you trying to do more work in unearthing some of the reasons why this is happening, and how the answers to some of these questions like you have posed.
Yes, absolutely.